What's up, everyone? Brendan Gulick, Spencer German with you, talking Cleveland Browns mandatory minicamp day one in Berea. Spencer on site for a day that had some storylines because DeShaun Watson was on the field and Amari Cooper was not.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what's funny about a day like today, Brendan, is normally Deshaun Watson would be the storyline, especially on a day where we saw his workload increased a little bit through his rehab process. He was throwing during 7-on-7 drills. I think normally that would be the thing we're leading with here, but today without Amari Cooper out there, that was obviously the dominating storyline. The fact that it sure sounds like, from what Kevin Stefanski's saying, this is a holdout type of situation where there's some sort of conversation going on. He wouldn't flat out say whether or not Cooper had asked for an extension. And you know how Stefanski is. He's not really one to get into that type of stuff anyway. But just, reading the tea leaves on the fact that, yeah, there had been talks with his agent prior to in regards to whether or not he was going to be here. So they kind of maybe knew that this was coming. You kind of got that suggestion. And, Stefanski played it very close to the vest about, hey, we're going to work with the guys that are here. But I'll let Andrew Berry and his agent and him deal with that type of stuff. So I think that all pretty much tells you what you need to know in terms of what's kind of going on here. And it's interesting because Cooper is one of those guys that you generally just anticipate, hey, he's a team first guy. He's probably going to be here. I understand the contract situation is what it is last year of his deal. So it was somewhat surprising that he wasn't here, especially because he was at David Njoku's celebrity softball game on Saturday. And so he was here just a couple days ago. But at the same time, you kind of understand it. I mean, you look around the league and you see some of these other players, Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle, Justin Jefferson's the big one, obviously, that just happened last week, getting paid. And you got to think Amari Cooper views himself in that light among those guys, or even better than some of those guys. And so I can understand why last year your deal, you're trying to kind of play it safe and not necessarily go back out there and play without an extension. So we'll see what kind of plays out from here. But obviously, that's the big storyline out of Berea this afternoon.
Yeah, and even to magnify it further, just the news recently around Jerry Jeudy and wanting to
Yeah.
have some stability solidified in that room. Amari's been fantastic since he's come to Cleveland, and to your point, team first guy all the way, and he's just never been a distraction. And so maybe it caught everybody that much more off guard that all of a sudden it feels like everybody's here and wait, where's Amari? Okay, you kind of take note of that kind of thing. So I mean, I certainly hope that this gets worked out here sooner than later. I think it goes without saying how bad the Browns need him on the field. I expect that he's going to play this fall. I'm not terribly concerned about it at this point, but it did catch me, and I know a lot of other folks off guard that he wasn't out there. I guess we should turn our attention to the guy that was out there in DeShaun Watson. That everybody wants to kind of know how DeShaun looked, what he said about how he felt. Obviously, he's not that far removed in the grand scheme of things from surgery, about 6 months, 6.5 months, but certainly seems like he's a long way on the road to recovery here. What'd you think of what you saw from DeShaun today?
Yeah, and I will say too, along the lines of the Amari Cooper thing in relation to Deshaun went as far as saying that that Cooper is the best wide receiver in football, or at least in that conversation. So he's helping out Cooper's side of the conversation here as they try to negotiate a contract. But that he is to this offense, and obviously his success in the field this year, which we know it's a big year for DeShaun, and a lot of pressure on him as he works his way back from that shoulder injury. But I thought today, from what we've seen to this point of him, and it hasn't been a ton. We really only got to see him throw for the first time in person as a media sort of group a couple weeks ago at OTAs. And yeah, like he was doing a lot of stuff half speed back then. There was a couple like larger throws made downfield, but nothing too crazy. Today, you saw him not take any deep shots, but you saw him, throwing a little bit more oomph behind it, which I thought was notable. There was a couple plays where he read some things nicely and made a couple of nice throws. He's still not necessarily airing it out. And the big step forward that we saw from the last time we saw him throw was that he was throwing during 7-on-7 drills today, which was different. He normally would just kind of take mental reps, fake the throw, sort of work in there, but he was never actually, making throws or really doing much during 7-on-7s. He was taking a lot of mental reps. So to see him kind of that be the next step I thought was interesting. And Kevin Stefanski said after practice, the next phase after that obviously is getting him throwing against a live defense 11 on 11, which nobody's willing to really give a set time on when he can do that. It doesn't sound like it's going to be this week. He's actually supposed to take tomorrow, throwing every other day throughout the spring, and then throw again on Thursday. So that conservative plan that DeShaun's talked about, that Stefanski's talked about, that the team as a whole has kind of talked about, still is basically the trajectory that they're on right now. And I would guess we'll start to see DeShaun do a little bit more in terms of throwing and really airing it out once we get to training camp at the Greenbrier, late July. So I don't know that we're going to see a ton more than what we saw today from him, but it was notable that he was doing his workload increased in terms of what he was able to do at practice. And I thought there were some nice throws. There were some bad throws too. I think that's going to happen. And I always warn people, Brendan, whenever I do these stand-ups or elsewhere, that we shouldn't read too much into any one or two throws that are being made here at OTAs or this week during mandatory minicamp.
It's not the end of the world, but it's good to see him out there moving around and certainly feel like we are kind of on a good trajectory here moving forward. Spencer German in Berea with all the latest. You can check out all the latest news and info on the team over at si.com/NFL/Browns. And we'll have plenty more coming tomorrow and Thursday as we continue our coverage of mandatory minicamp here in Berea.